Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the Dubuis Pulsion Chronograph. You can see and you can purchase this Pulsion Chronograph on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this watch with additional accessories included in the sale, high resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this 44mm titanium Dubuis Pulsion Chronograph. Now, the watch on my wrist represents a 2012 model year debut at SIHH that can be seen as a transition between the Dubuis of today and the Dubuis of yesteryear. This is a cross-threading, so to speak, of those two traditions, aesthetically and mechanically. And for many, this watch will be just right, the middle ground between the outlandish Genevois Richard Mille aesthetic of today and the strictly traditional aesthetic of the mid-1990s Sogem years. So on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see this watch is an easy fit. Though 44mm in circumference, not including the crown pushers or crown guards, it has a wonderfully curved case with short cropped lugs that span only 50.5mm across the wrist, and I'll show you in profile, the watch actually has an effective camber to its case in the way it arcs down over the wrist at its edges. It's also fairly slim, all things considered. It looks thicker than its 14.7mm, and it will fit underneath a suit jacket cuff, just not the dress sleeve beneath. Titanium means it is very light, and a full width strap means it is very planted. It doesn't want to move around on the wrist. Now, I haven't sized the strap down to my wrist, but you can see that it is not a strap that you cut. Unlike previous Dubuis straps, this one has a number of apertures for a traditional pin buckle built into a deployant clasp. The deployant clasp in titanium, it features twin trigger actuation to pop open, so it cannot simply pop open by itself. It needs positive release, and again, no need to size the strap. All sizes will work. Tailor it to suit. The strap is nicely integrated into the flank of the case. As you can see, if you want to get an aftermarket strap, you will need to go custom, but Dubuis has no shortage of OEM options. The strap is nicely defined with horizontal striations and these two longitudinal bars that give it definition. You can also see on the underside, it's thoughtfully detailed with inset, let me see if I can find them, inset Dubuis logos, as well as pockets that allow the wrist to breathe a little bit, aerate on a hot day. Now, the watch features a complex case design that is alternately polished along a certain number of small and judiciously chosen highlighted bevels, and highly modular in that it looks like a number of separate sculptural efforts that are sort of existing in parallel. There's the flare of this mid-case section, there's the smooth and organic arc of the lugs. You can see that the bezel itself actually lives as a sort of crown atop the structure, with the unique and proprietary screws holding the bezel directly to the case itself. There's a small knuckle poking out between the strap ends on both sides, and on the pusher side you can see that the pushers are profiled in several ways. They're polished on their outer lip, they're satin finished on their flanks, and they taper as they approach the ends of the case. You can see that there is a crown guard structure that surrounds the crown itself with inset RD logo, and the crown is large and heavily knurled to make for easy handling. You'll also note that the watch features polished lugs and a hairlined polished bevel that runs the length of the case. The junction with the case back is flat and regularly shaped, so there are no pressure points or hot spots on the wrist. Now, the bezel is perhaps the most striking stylistic feature of the watch, as it is set atop the case rather than sitting within a bezel structure. The crystal and the bezel essentially are one, with the crystal sitting on top of what would conventionally be the bezel. I'm going to try to move in a little bit closer so you can see in greater detail. It's a crystal bezel. It's a monostructure, and it flanks a striking dial that combines the same level of finish you would expect on a Geneva hallmark movement, which this watch has, and some of the design language that's become germane to the Dubuis brand in the modern era, the 2010s. Now, you can see that there's a number of different focal planes. There's a tachymeter scale outboard, and I may as well start the watch up so you can measure the speed of an object over a fixed distance. The indices are all beautiful, applied, and blued. You can see they have a three-dimensional loft above the plane of the hour track. You can see seconds and minutes outboard, and then as we move inboard, you can see there are evacuated sub-registers that feature internal smoked sapphire discs, so you can read, for instance, constant seconds and chronograph minutes on top of the discs themselves, as indicated by the hands. Now, there is a stylized Arabic numeral 12 at 12 o'clock and a stylized counterpart 6 at 6 o'clock with a tight and even engine-turned perlage across the base of the dial. Again, you are looking at the plate of the movement right there, so it is fitting that the finish would be to the highest degree. Now, the watch is gorgeous and not terribly legible in the traditional sense, but worth the effort. There's that term, it's worth your while, it's worth the effort, and it is indeed, because this watch is gorgeous and begs you to engage with it. That's what's achieved with this highly skeletonized and airy dial aesthetic. You can even see the striations, the Côte de Genève, narrowly spaced, running top to bottom. This watch wants you to look deep into it, not just deep into its dial, but into the soul of the machine itself. And I'll show you how that's expressed on the case back. First, in one of the only instances I know of a vertical clutch that you can see. Now, I'm going to lighten things up a bit so you can see to better advantage. But what's here is absolutely beautiful. And in fact, I want to highlight another advantage over certain watches in the space, which is that you can quickly just pull the strap out of the opposite side of the buckle and get an unobstructed view of the case back. Now, you're looking at Dubuis caliber RD680, tungsten microrotor automatic with a 52-hour power reserve of 4 Hz or 28,800 vibration per hour beat rate. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer and Geneva hallmark signed. As you can see, the Pulsion de Genève just above the balance and ghosted onto the case back. You may not be able to see it, but to take my advice and my assurance, it is their certified chronometer. The two being an unusual combination, the watch leaves nothing to the imagination with the vertical clutch visible, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. The vertical clutch is essentially a system of discs that move vertically, held in place or dropped by pincers, almost like a vintage record player. Now, you can see the move in to close the clutch, pick the plate up off its corresponding opposite, and disengage the chronograph mechanism. And you can see the pincers on both sides of this wheel just below my finger move out when I activate the chronograph. So chronograph off, plates up and separated, almost like the clutch of a car, pincers out, plates together, system in progress. Now, you can see there's a column wheel that interacts with the horns and levers of the chronograph to select the function. So it's a best case scenario. You have a column wheel, crisp and traditional, and beautifully finished with black polished crenellated towers and center screw, and you have a vertical clutch which is highly efficient, such that if you prefer, for example, to run the watch continuously, you can do that with no hazard to the movement. You can have center seconds rather than constant seconds because the vertical clutch allows continuous running of the chronograph with no hazard. It also allows for a smoother start to the chronograph. There is no jump when you activate it. It simply starts moving because there is no play in a vertical clutch system. Beautifully executed. You can see the linear Côte de Genève perfectly aligned across the bridges. A tight and even perlage engine turning across the base plate below the winding mass and below the balance itself, and then you'll note everything that is black polished that turns black when I turn the watch flush to the camera. You'll also note the gleam on the edge of all the bridges and the levers that are mirror polished with hand laid, rounded, and optically smooth anglage with the same treatment applied to the jewel countersinks. This is Geneva hallmark finishing of the finest order, and it has none of the Achilles heels of traditional automatic vertical clutch chronograph movements, like, for instance, the one you might see in a Patek Philippe 5960, as this has a micro rotor, so you don't have an obscured view that's cut off by a winding mass, and it has a visible vertical clutch, so what you lose in the visibility of the lateral clutch system, you gain back in the vertical clutch. It is beautiful and almost like a forest of metal. It has gorgeous depth. You can look into this movement, which is over 6 millimeters thick, and truly enjoy all for which you have paid. Now, I should also mention that you pay for a good deal of durability with this watch. The watch is 100 meters water resistant, so not only does this incredible combination sapphire and bezel look fantastic, but it also seals the watch resolutely against water intrusion, with 10 bar or 100 meter water resistance being plenty for almost all aquatic activities short of professional diving. This is a stunning watch right down to the small details, which include tiny plots of luminova atop the minute and the hour hand. So yes, in true sports watch fashion, you can read it in the dark. See it and decide for yourself on our website.